Hello, Saints fans. Welcome to Ranting and Raving. Today we're going to follow up uh, earlier this week's video about potential defensive draft candidates for the Saints in the 2023 draft. Just like the defense, I'm going to be going through the players who I think are both likely fits, but also attainable. So, CJ Stroud won't be on the list because I don't think there's any way that they can or would go get him, even though he would be my preferred pick if they had the option. So, with that said, we're going to go position by position. And just as a reminder, how I go through each of these for all the different potential candidates for this list. First, watched a couple of their highlight films, and the logic behind that is if your highlights don't stand up and out to make me want to learn more, probably not enough of an impact player, especially at the positions we're looking at, to be worth the time to discuss. And then, of course, the players that are worth looking into, I watch a couple of games and we take it from there. So, with no further ado, let's get into the first player, and that is Jahmyr Gibbs out of Alabama. So, Gibbs is like dynamic is just kind of the perfect word for him. He's an explosive playmaker out of the backfield, catching the ball. If he has a chance to plant his foot in the ground and get 4 yards of space, he might be gone. He's a guy who has a third gear. A lot of backs have a second gear. Some guys can hit it really fast. Some guys take a little bit of time to get there, but most backs have a second gear. Gibbs has a third gear, and Gibbs can skip the second gear. Not a lot of guys have the kind of speed and explosiveness that he has, but he combines that with having really, really good feet and balance, and the ability to flow across traffic in space. So the ability to weave through defenders, to shorten his steps, elongate his steps, manage his stride, create lanes, and then hit them. Um, Not only at the line of scrimmage, but at the second level and sometimes while going full speed. It's incredibly impressive. I would not take him at 29, but if the Saints grabbed him at 29, I wouldn't be mad about it. Um, I think that running back, other than Bijan, who's the one guy this year that I would take in the first round, no questions asked. I think he's special, special. I think running back is a deep enough position, and there's enough duplication of skill sets that you're likely to be able to get someone deeper in the draft. Although the Saints do have a significant need at running back, both for youth and explosiveness, um, and potentially long term as well, with Alvin Kamara's legal situation as well as just age, wear and tear, etc. The life of a running back in the NFL, we know how that goes. Um, but with all that said, if they took him at 29, I wouldn't have a problem with it at all. If he somehow made it to 40, I think you sprint to the podium and you don't even think about it. I don't think he'll make it to 40, but if he does, I think that's an incredibly easy decision. He's got a good enough build. He can take hits. He's not probably going to get blown up a ton. Again, can make guys miss, manages pace well, good feet, has a good ability to turn hard hits into glancing shots, make guys miss, break tackles, etc. So incredibly dynamic player. Speaking of not only incredibly dynamic players but also duplication of skill sets, uh, Devon A-Chain, I don't know, I'm probably fucking up his name. Very similar to Gibbs in a lot of ways, as far as like they're not the same player, not exactly the same physical makeup either. I think a chain's a little bit smaller, not a ton smaller. They're both pretty small backs, but a little bit smaller. Watching him actually reminds me a lot of Darren Sproles. It's in the way he runs, the way he's built. He's not, even though he's a small back, he's not slight. He's pretty compact. Um, doesn't obviously break a ton of tackles, but really has some special quickness. I'm incredibly impressed by him. I think he is a scheme dependent player. I think teams with a West Coast quarterback, with a timing offense, with a player like him who can both run routes but also work as a safety valve, I think that's going to be his best fit. He is what God, who's that trash running back out of LSU that got drafted in the first round by the Chiefs? I forget his name because I only remember good players. Um, he's kind of what they were hoping they were getting in him, to me. I think he can run between the tackles, but I think he's absolutely at his best. Um, you know, dump off passes, you know, runs to the outside, stretch plays, reverses, things like that. And considering the Saints roster with Olave as well as Shaheed, there's a good duplication of skills there. The ability to take the thing that one guy does really well, duplicate it across the roster, and create a lot of pressure and a lot of confusion with the defense. When more than one guy can do something, it then becomes a question of, but which guy is doing something? Or are any of them doing the something? And that confusion can lead to busted coverages and open plays. It's historically was one of the key elements of Peyton's offense when it was at its peak. Whether you're looking at 2011, the absolute peak of the offense, or even 2009 when they won the Super Bowl. So not only the dynamic playmaker element, but also just the duplication of skills. This is a gimme player. For me, a gimme player is a guy that I would move assets to get him. Like if he makes it past 40, I might not wait till 71. I might package a fifth or even two, um, and go get him early so that I can ensure that I get the player. If they haven't already addressed running back after making their pick at 40, 100% I would grab him. I don't think there's a huge difference between him and Gibbs. I think Gibbs is the better player, but I don't think it's a huge difference, and I think A-Chain can be gotten later. The next guy on the list, we're obviously going by position groups here, is to me the only available, because again, Bijan is special. To me, the only guy who I think projects as a three-down running back. Could be a main number one back, can do everything, is Zach Charbonnet. He can be an impact player at the second level. He's not a guy who makes a ton of people miss at the line of scrimmage. He's got a little bit of wiggle, but his hips are a little bit tight. His feet aren't incredible. Good feet, but not incredible. And he's just not super decisive or super explosive. But if you get him those first 3 yards, he'll get you the next 10. And if he gets to 10, he does have long speed. So he doesn't have short area speeds. He's not going to turn a 3-yard run into a 12-yard run. But he might turn a 10-yard run into a 35-yard run, or potentially even more. So he does have enough speed to be able to finish plays, to make big plays down the field. But he's not just a 60, 70-yard run guy. That's pretty much not going to happen with him. If it does, the defense quit. But that's not everything you need. That's why you're looking at a guy who's a three-down back. This is a guy who can take a heavy workload. He has a nose for the end zone. But also, he's a very good pass protector. So when I say a three-down back, I don't just mean his ability to be a receiver out of the backfield, which he's really good at. Really, really good hands. Again, good feet, good balance, manages himself well, gets open, understands space. But he's a good blocker, too. He's already developed in that area. And so this is where you have a guy who's a plug-and-play player. Now, we talked about duplication in a good way previously. The only issue I would have with signing him is drafting him. He's not that dissimilar from Jamal Williams. They bring a lot of the same things. I think, and I could be wrong, but I think Charbonnet may be a better pro than Williams will end up being, but I think it's very close. Obviously, in 99% of these cases, a lot of it depends on where you end up. But assuming he ends up either in New Orleans or somewhere similar where he has an opportunity to be in a good offense with a good quarterback, I could see him having a similar career and similar production, which isn't a bad thing at all. But there's a little bit of concern with the duplication of skill sets there, at least for this year. But you don't have a huge investment in Williams, and at the end of the day, having two good backs is not necessarily a bad thing. But I think he's the only three-down back not named Bijan Robinson in this draft that I am confident in. The other three-down back part of this is because he's the hometown kid, and I just love a great story. So I said, Charbonnet is the only three down back I have confidence in. I think that Tyjae Spears is going to be a three down back in the NFL. I think that he is going to be a playmaker. I think that he is going to be more of an impact player than people expect. I think he's got a fantastic reputation for leadership and being a character guy, which would do very well in New Orleans and is criminally underrated, I think, at times. He's not strong enough, and this is the reason why, again, I have a little bit more confidence in Charbonnet over him. I don't think he's strong enough, especially in his lower body, to get the tough yards and make something out of nothing along the line of scrimmage and in the red zone. Um, that said, when he's in space, he can do some really special things, and he is definitely a game flow player and a flow athlete. And what I mean by a flow athlete is he has the ability to read and react to what's going on around him and feel the game and not need to hesitate. Some of the big plays he made, especially what he did against USC, I know they're terrible defense, but you know it still happened. It still exists. We still count that. Um, some of those plays are not, oh, this guy's just a better athlete than the other guys. Plays, they're setting a guy up and then making a move and making an unexpected move and getting to a spot they didn't think you were going to get to or get there when they didn't think you were going to get there. And he does all those things naturally. Um, he is a good pass protector. So he'd be the other guy. Again, if he's I wouldn't take him in the second, unless there's a run on running backs and all the other good ones are already gone, in which case the Saints have a significant need for that. I would absolutely take him at 40, but I don't think there's going to be a big run on running backs in the second round, so probably a third round pick. I'm not a big mock draft guy. I don't really give a shit if, oh, but I had him as a fifth round pick and you took him in the third. I don't care. If they're a good productive player, don't give a shit. And if they're not, doesn't matter where they were drafted because they're not a good player. Stephon Anthony was drafted in the first round, and nobody had a problem with that pick, and he was out of the league in 4 years. Might have even been three. I think he was on Atlanta's special teams unit for a year or something. But you get the idea. Where you had a guy mocked doesn't really mean much at all, and I couldn't care less if they overdraft a guy if they get a good player that has the right fit and an opportunity to succeed. So I wouldn't have a problem with Tyjae Spears at all. But even though I love the hometown story, definitely not my top option. So now let's go into the tight end group. So the big name is definitely Dalton Kincaid. He's a wide receiver in a tight end's body. Does everything you want out of basically as a flex tight end, as a jumbo wide receiver, can go up the seam, can go up the sidelines, can make big plays, can make plays in the red zone, has good hands, fluid movement in space, was productive in college, produced in a bunch of different ways, Power 5 conference, checking all the boxes. The only thing is, as a blocker, he makes Jimmy Graham look like Rob Gronkowski. Uh, I'm not even sure if that's something where it's like, oh, he needs to work on that as much as it's like, I'm not sure he can work on that. I'm not sure it's an effort issue. I think could be a frame and mental makeup issue. So we'll see how that goes. But if he's there at 29, which I don't think he will be, but if he is there at 29 and the Saints take him, it's certainly not a bad pick. This team does not have any studs at tight end. And again, this is not necessarily a Super Bowl roster, so you're drafting in the first two rounds for immediate impact players, and really probably the first 3 rounds you're hoping to get immediate production out of guys, but you are also drafting for the future, especially with a first round pick. You do get that fifth year option, so wouldn't be mad at Dalton Kincaid at all. The next guy on the list is Michael Mayer. He is he is at the exact opposite end of the spectrum of Kincaid. By the way, this is definitely the highest jump of his life, and he is still not clearing the linebacker. Um, this guy's a monster truck. We don't talk about his 0 to 60. He doesn't have one. He also doesn't get stuck in, commuter traffic because he just drives through commuter traffic or over it. Um, you know, big, strong, very physical, very technical, um, productive. Like he's not incapable as a receiver. I've seen some Gronkowski comparisons. I don't know why. Rob in space was always a fluid athlete. He was lumbering, heavy-footed, thump, 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 but could move in space and had a second gear. And for what a gargantuan mammoth of a human being he is, very fluid, coming in and out of breaks. Michael Mayer is none of those things. He is not a dynamic athlete. His lateral agility is, frankly, kind of shit. Um, he's not a sexy player. My number one theme for this year's draft is playmakers. He's really the only guy I'm looking at that I don't think is ever really going to be a playmaker. Maybe in the red zone. I could really see him having a lot of success there. But he's such a rock solid player across the board. He's the kind of guy that can, if you have enough dynamic players elsewhere, which honestly the Saints kind of do, especially if in later rounds they get another running back, especially an explosive one. He's the kind of guy that can really be that glue guy that keeps the whole offense together. Oh, it's 3rd and 5, and they doubled this guy, and that guy's not open. Oh well, you just throw a 5 yard out to Mayer, and he brings it in, and he finishes the day for 6 catches for 61 yards and a touchdown, and it's a great lunch pail day. Meanwhile, he's blocking his ass off and opening lanes for your running backs and protecting your quarterback and doing a great job at all the other stuff. And your offense puts up 37 points, and his contribution is massive when the team goes and reviews film later in the week. He's that kind of guy. So he's not a playmaker, but he's the other kind of player I'm going to value in the first round where they're going to have a meaningful impact day one by creating opportunities for the players who are special athletes to do things and also helping the offense stay on schedule. So I wouldn't have a problem with them picking him at all. Not a sexy pick, not my favorite tight end, but not a guy I'd complain about at all. This is my favorite tight end. I'm not alone in loving this guy. I think he's going to be an awesome pro. I think there's a chance that he gets underdrafted on where I think his talent and his film, but his talent in particular, should put him simply because he is overshadowed by, I'm brain farting on his name, but the number one tight end at Georgia is just an animal. He's an incredible player, and so Washington doesn't get the he doesn't get the shine that he really should. In my perfect draft, which will be our next video, he is my second round pick. I'll just spoiler alert that right here. To me, I see a ton of Jimmy Graham in his game. I see it some in the frame, but I see it mostly in the way he moves, the way he gets open, the way he attacks the ball, but also his attitude once the ball is in his hands. He is willing to run over guys, to hurdle guys. He has some really, really special things in the open field. I think he's going to be a much better pro than he was a college player. And my biggest thing is he's got a complete skill set. He's just known as a blocker right now, but you go and turn on the tape, you watch him run, you watch him play. I don't think it's a lack. I don't think the lack of production comes from a lack of ability. I think it comes almost entirely from a lack of opportunity. This guy can really do it all. Um, it, again, does actually remind me a lot of Jimmy in a bunch of ways, just physically, how he runs, how he moves. 100% gimme player. If he is there at 40 and they take him, I would be ecstatic. Honestly, if they took him at 29, I wouldn't lose my mind, but it would entirely depend on how the board fell. And I just don't see a scenario where the board would fall where that would be the best pick. But I frankly wouldn't be mad. I think he's going to be a really, really special player. So now we can move on to our last position group, which is, of course, wide receiver. While we do have Chris Olave, who was great as rookie, Rashid Shaheed, who had a big time breakout year as a undrafted free agent. At the end of the day, you are talking about two very slight, quick and fast. And Olave can run all the routes and can make some contested catches, but like he did struggle in some of those areas. Players, so enter Quentin Johnston. Um, I think it's incredibly unlikely that he makes it to 29. If he did, you make the pick and you figure it out. As far as I'm concerned, but if they're gonna move up, like if he gets to the late teens, early 20s, I could see them going. This is our guy. To me, he's an answer to the question: what if Kevin White was good? Kevin White was very good at West Virginia, but some of that was less him and more the quarterback, I think. And obviously it proved that way as a pro, although injuries definitely had a lot to do with that. I don't know if he's as fast as Kevin White, but I mean, am I drawing some parallels because they're both like 6'4", 6'5", got dreads? Yeah, a little bit. But honestly, it's the frame, it's the game, it's a lot of the other stuff too. Like he really does actually remind me a lot of like Kevin White if he was good at football. Um, I think he's a three-level wide receiver. He can catch the ball short. He can break a tackle, make plays. He can catch it intermediately, move the chains. Not an incredible technician route-wise, but definitely plays to his size. Um, I don't know if he'll ever be like people say a number one. Really, a number one is determined by the defense. Whoever the defense decides they need to take away is the number one. So in that regard, he may be a number one just because of his big playability and his frame. But as far as the reliable guy that you could build a whole offense around, like Michael Thomas was, I don't think he'll ever be that. But as a complementary player, especially to someone like Olave, he could be incredibly dynamic. And again, he's got a massive frame. He plays to it, which not all guys do. And really really good feet for a guy that big, 6'4", 200 plus. Um, really good feet. Moves well, can make short steps, long steps, loose hips, move in and out of breaks. Can really do some stuff in small areas that I think projects extremely well to the next level. Next guy on the list is Jordan Addison. If Jordan Addison was like 16, 15, 16 pounds heavier than he is, he'd probably be a gimme player. As much as again, he's got that kind of redundant skill set with Olave and Shaheed as far as being a playmaker, but you can never have too many of those. And he's a little bit different than them as far as being able to make difficult catches. He's definitely better at that, but he's not a spectacular athlete. Did not test well. I think he's a much better player on film than what he tested as. Again, redundant. Is it good redundant? Is it bad redundant? I'm not sure. The frame is the only question for me. Is he going to be injured? Is he going to be able to win those contested catches? Is he going to be a dynamic slot guy that's going to dominate for them and fill a missing hole in the roster? I don't think so. But if because of his combine, like if he dropped to the third or God forbid the fourth round, F it, take him and figure it out. Like just get good players, and put Traquan in one of Elon's crappy self-driving cars that don't actually work and get his ass off my team. Um, Last guy here. This is the last gimme player. I think NFL execs are going to overthink him. Uh, Something tells me he's not going to be the first wide receiver off the board. Something tells me he might not even be taken in the first round, which I think would be shocking, but also not shocking. He's not a incredible athlete, and I think teams are going to overthink him. And I hope they do, because if he makes it to the mid 20s, low to mid 20s, I'll be shocked if the Saints go get him or don't go get him. Um, he's a perfect fit for what this offense needs. Not only is he Michael Thomas insurance, he's a perfect complement to Olave. How do we know that? Because he was the perfect complement to him in college. They, like I mean, the Saints drafting Ohio State players at this point is more than just a meme. It's basically, like Paul Heyman says, it's I don't make predictions, I give spoilers. If he's there in the low 20s, like you're gonna see that Florida lead pop across the screen. I'm just letting you know right now. The guy is a chain mover. He can be dynamic. Like he can make plays. You don't expect him to go 60, 70 yards down the field unless a coverage is completely busted. But he can make plays. He can make plays in the red zone. Like he's not just a, you know, 12 catches for 72 yards guy. He can really do some damage. He just gets open. He's so fluid. His hands are fantastic. He has a great understanding of space and pace, shortening his steps, elongating his steps, setting up running backs, managing the stem of the route. He has such a excellent understanding of how to be a wide receiver and to maximize his abilities, and he's so freaking fluid. Him as a slot wide receiver, I think would be just it would really help take this offense to the next level. I would be ecstatic if the Saints took him. You almost definitely have to trade up for him, but as long as you're not giving up the 2024 first, I think I'd probably be okay with it. Honestly, I think he's going to be really, really good in the pros. And that is our final player. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, do all those wonderful YouTube things. We'll be having more regular content coming out here. As a reminder, we did cover the defense in the previous video, and in a couple of days I'll have last video before the draft coming out saying what my perfect first 3 rounds of the draft would be. So stay tuned for that. Hope you guys enjoyed, and we'll be back more with more Saints content.